As an athlete, I competed in the 2008 Olympic trials. I just recall being in the greatest physical shape of my life. My name got called for the first attempt in the ring. I felt like my legs get tingly and my heart start racing and my palms start sweating and stuff like that. It was just classic like performance anxiety, but I had never experienced that.
That's Will Fleming, the coach behind 2024 Olympian Mary Tyson Lappin and the author of his newest book, Strong Mind. In this episode, we dive deep into the importance of sports psychology.
In the book, I compare these mental skills to armor, and we're just beefing up your armor.
Break down methods you can use to build a champion mindset.
I have like two things I ask every athlete to journal. What did I like about today's session? And what did I learn today? So we'll do stuff like resilience training. I'm gonna have somebody walk in front of you, see if you back off or see if you take it. Make you take your opener, wait 8 minutes, and then you have to take it again. You're gonna feel it, you acknowledge it, you're gonna stop it with something physical, a breath or otherwise, and then you're gonna cue it, and then that thing is passed.
How to build strong self-confidence and overcome perfectionism.
I am not a believer in fake it till you make it. Confidence is earned. You can earn confidence along the way in a bunch of senses, right? Like if you did it in training, that's earned confidence that you can do it in a meet. There's adaptive perfectionism, the stuff that leads us to being successful, and then there's maladaptive perfectionism.
And the importance of understanding how your identity in weightlifting impacts your long-term performance.
If you feel guilty taking a week off 20 weeks away from a meet, your identity is probably maybe too associated with weightlifting right then. Weightlifting is a wait your turn sport. For most people, you just gotta keep going. There are a bunch of people who are kind of like comets into the sport, and then they just are gone. You're like, wait, do you remember when so-and-so won nationals? Do you remember that club that was gonna change everything? And then they're gone. You can't just be totally wrapped up in the identity of weightlifting because you're gonna burn out.
Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Last Set Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength. I've been teaching Olympic lifting for the last 11 years now.
And I'm Coach Calvin, current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting program, as well as a coach through Big Ben Strength.
And today we've got a guest for you guys. This is Coach Will Fleming. Coach, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, in the briefest of terms, I've been weightlifting for 27 years and been coaching weightlifting for the last 16. And most recently, I coached at the 2024 Olympics in weightlifting.
That's awesome. 27 years, crazy. Almost as long as I've been alive. You've been weightlifting.
Longer than Calvin's been alive.
Longer than Calvin's been alive. That's crazy. So today we wanted to kind of get into talking about mindset and sports psychology because you have a book coming out soon called Strong Mind. You want to talk a little bit about the book?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, one, for having me. Thanks for giving me time to talk about the book. So, as a weightlifting coach, you look at athletes and weightlifting, one of the things that has always attracted me to it, I've done a bunch of sports performance stuff and trained athletes that have gone to the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, all that kind of stuff. And with a lot of athletes, the physical can lead to performance, right? But it's not always like one-to-one. So, I always would struggle with this idea that I would have like a high school soccer player gets faster, stronger, jumps higher. Every performance metric goes through the roof, but the performance on the field doesn't really match because they're just not very good tactically or technically. And so in weightlifting, I was really drawn as a coach to like go into weightlifting because I'm both the sport coach and the strength coach in this sense. And because I'm the sport and strength coach, I can control every variable from the first day of training through competition. And a lot of times, if I have so I pride myself on having like great tactics in the back room and that I can like make sure that I advantage my athlete in every single regard back there. I think that I coach technique super well and have athletes who have flexible and malleable technique based on who they are physically. And then from the programming side, I think I do as good a job and as anybody in terms of the athletes that I have and providing like the right physical stimulus to get the right outcomes. But I also in the last quad, I was and I have lived this experience as well. Is as an athlete, I competed in the 2008 Olympic trials in track and field, and I was. I just recall being in the greatest physical shape of my life and like being ready to like have just this really awesome performance. And even through warm-ups, I was having that like sort of performance. But then once my name got called for the first attempt in the ring, I felt like my legs get tingly and my heart start racing and my palms start sweating and stuff like that. It was just classic like performance anxiety, but I had never experienced that, and it was like popped up in the biggest moment of my life until that point. So, I had experienced this, but then as a coach, because I want to advantage my athletes to the best possible of my ability, I started like looking into other things, and I realized that like when I had two athletes trying to qualify for the Olympics last quad, that the difficult thing was not the physical. Like they were able to do the total and capable of doing the total, that would put them in the top 10 in the world and make the team. It was just like either the pressure of the specific competition and putting it together on meet day. One of my athletes really struggled with that, and the other one just struggled with the day-to-day like grind and pressure of just like always worrying. This is an American athlete, worrying that somebody is going to take your spot or this and that, all this kind of like this pressure. So I just was like, had decided that the greatest advantage that I could then give my athletes was to really dive in on the sports or the sports psychology side, and that their performance would improve the most if I did that, if I equipped them with that armor that is this really sound mental game. And so that was kind of the impetus to me really diving in to start studying it. And then because of that, I wanted to bring that to more people. I think that it's not talked about as a topic. It's almost talked about as a topic for guys like me who ended up with performance anxiety at the biggest meet. Like, you need to fix this. But in truth, you need to, it's like, you don't only make people, like basketball players can't just play basketball. They also have to go to the gym and lift weights. Weightlifters can't just go to the gym and lift weights. They also have to work on these other pieces of their game. Just like you would focus on someone's nutrition, their recovery, the mental performance side of things has to go along with that. And I just didn't think there's enough resources and there aren't enough people talking about it. So it was something that I really felt that I wanted to take the lead on and go out and speak about and talk to people about and help educate weightlifters on.
And I think that this is really important because, kind of like you were hinting at there, sports psychology and just mindset approach for competition in general is really thought of almost as a reactive thing. Like, you don't know that you need to start doing it until you realize that something's going wrong, or you realize that it's really affecting you. But it's not a reactive thing. It's something that you should probably be proactive about and building into, so that when things do go wrong, you have all the tools to do that. So one tool that I noticed that I was kind of looking through your stuff, you've got a fantastic reset framework for when things kind of don't go to plan in the warm-up room or in competition. Can you break down this reset framework for us and how lifters can start using that immediately to improve their training or their competition?
Yeah. So, one is like, mistakes are going to happen. You're going to miss a lift, right? You're going to miss a warm up. You're going to, any number of things could happen. And so the number one thing is just acknowledge it. I say, like, feel it. It's okay to, don't pretend it didn't happen. And then, it's not like that is nothing. That was something. So you need to like feel it. Like, I rushed the lift. I let my chest drop off the floor. Like, acknowledge it and figure out why it happened, right? What was going on? Start there. And then you need to interrupt it. And then you just stop it, right? So it's like you felt it. Now you don't ruminate on it and sit on it. You got to stop it. And so that could be anything physical, like a deep breath. Some people, that doesn't do anything, that gets them more uptight. You could pinch your legs, you could slap your thighs, you could, do something physical that's the end of that thing. And then you need to figure out a way to fix it. So you cue it, or something, right? So it'd be cue it, keep your chest up, stay tight, whatever it is. I like to combine something powerful, like big, and something technical, like big, chest up, or get big, finish high, or something like that. Whatever that thing is to fix it, and then you go do it. But it's just really quick. You're gonna feel it, you acknowledge it, know that it happened. You're gonna stop it with something physical, a breath or otherwise, and then you're gonna cue it, and then that thing is past, right? But then the final piece is you got to practice it. So in training, you have to practice this. When you miss, you have to go through the same sort of reset. So it's not like. It's not the biggest deal when you miss. It's not nothing. What happened? How can you stop it? Or how can you fix it? How can you stop it? How can you cue it?
I love that. I mean, as a younger coach myself, I think the thing that I used to do was not address it and try and just pretend like it didn't happen. And then hopefully I would let my kind of like non-worry pour over into the athlete and they would just sense that. But then, much alarmingly later, I realized that, oh, they can't read my mind and they might just think that I'm really mad that they missed that lift or something like that. So I think that this is just a really useful framework for coaches who may be making that kind of mistake, like I did. But two, it's also useful for the athletes that are listening who have a hard time bouncing back from those kind of moments where you almost feels like it's out of your control. Something bad happens and just the whole competition just immediately slips from your grasp a little bit. Do you have any tips on how to kind of deal with that feeling of like maybe it's an all or nothing kind of mindset that causes that?
Well, you bring up a good point that you said it feels like it's out of your control. And one of the reasons I said like a fix it framework is like, I think a fix it mentality is really important in that you are in control. Like you can fix it. You have the internal locus of control that you are in charge of what's going on. You can move your body in a way that you want, and then you are able to do that. And so if I have that internal locus of control and I practice the idea that like I'm capable of fixing this, I can make the changes necessary, I have the proof because I've done it, it's less likely for you to jump into that spiral when it's like what's happening and stuff like that in a meet. So I really think it starts back there. It starts with coaches like saying, hey, you're in control, you can fix this. And maybe here's how. Maybe the coaches have to guide it. But as a collaborative process, the coaches will guide that towards fixing it. Or then the athlete internally is able to do that as well, where they're like, okay, I felt it. I know what happened. I've stopped it. Now I'm going to cue it and I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I think it's establishing that internal locus of control, that the athlete is able to fix things, that athletes have that ability. And then I'm such a big believer in like confidence is earned, right? So I am not a believer in fake it till you make it, right? Like fake it till you make it isn't real, but you can earn confidence along the way in a bunch of senses, right? Like if you did it in training, that's earned confidence so you can do it in a meet. Once you do it in a small meet, that's earned confidence so you can do it in a bigger meet, all that kind of stuff. And so you just have to practice stuff. Just, that's what we know about athletic pursuits. If you practice them enough, they become habit. We see that in a lot of different practices. And so then that means that anything we want to change, we can turn into a new habit.
A quick interruption to the video to tell you about something we've been working on for a long time, the 10-week squat program. One of the reasons I've been able to make progress in my Olympic lifts so quickly is through my strength reserve. As an 88 kilo lifter, I've back squatted 230 kilos or over 500 pounds. While we don't compete in the squat, having an excess of squat strength allows me to get in more training in the Olympic lifts as they don't fatigue me as much. And of course, if you can't squat a weight, you're never gonna be able to clean it. So if you feel like the squat is what's holding you back, be sure to use code LASTSETPOD, all uppercase, at checkout to get a 20% discount on your program today. So we kind of talked a little bit about on the day of competition, what we're focusing on, in that back room while we're warming up. Let's take another step out to like the week before competing. What kind of prep are you doing as we go into that day to make sure people are ready?
Yeah, I actually started doing this this year. Is I have kind of like a meet week worksheet that athletes start 7 days out. It goes through a bunch of the big pieces that are coming in my book, and that's like your identity, your pre-performance routines, and all that kind of stuff. And one of them is, you might start just kind of like as this. Your identity is really important, and I know that we have a question later that I'll really jump in and talk about identity. But like you say stuff like, when I'm at my best as a lifter, I see myself as someone who, and then what is that? And that kind of sets the tone for that week. And most of them don't say, like most people don't answer that question and say, I see myself as someone who snatches 150. because that's like not a person. That's like a thing. That's like an act. I see myself as someone who competes hard and bounces back after setbacks. That's somebody you might want to see yourself as. So it like kind of sets that week so that you're kind of thinking about that meet in a little bit different way. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of have, so you have a lot of questions in that worksheet. Did you cover all of them there, or do you have even?
No, gosh, no. But that first idea was one that I think is really important because it sets the tone. And so, like, you go through that identity anchor where it's like, what kind of person will I be? What kind of things can I do that will remind me of that? And that's like bounce back after a miss. That's focus on one attempt at a time. It's all that kind of stuff. As you're more seasoned, these things make a lot of sense. And maybe early on, coaches help guide athletes through that. We go through a pre-performance routine. We detail that really, really well. So what are the things you like to do? And you should know that inside and out. I encourage my athletes to actually write these down and be able to like see them. But, to me, when I lifted, it was pull my knee. Once my name was called, that was when my routine started. That was pull my knee sleeves up, maybe give my wrist wraps one little tighten, then walk to the chalk bucket, chalk my hands, back of the platform. I had like a little, positive statement. I would say, I'm the biggest, baddest guy in this place, or get big, or something that was like kind of really encouraging. And then tighten my belt and walk to the bar. And that was the order I would do stuff. And it wasn't superstition. It wasn't that you don't want to create superstition, because what if the chalk bucket's on the other side of the platform? You got to walk across to get to it. We don't want that. We want repeatable routines that help you get in that kind of spot, right? So we'd map that sort of thing out so that you're really ready on meet day. Once your name is called, you're going into this routine, and then you can focus on what you want to do.
One question I have regarding the routine: how do you make sure that the routine that you use doesn't become a crutch when it can't be done?
Yeah, exactly. Train flexibility. This is your routine. Move something out of some athletes are just going to be flexible. Some athletes, you see this rigidity start to develop. They don't want to move platforms in training, right? I have to lift on this one. And it's like, whoa, we're not dealing with that. Like, everybody's moving today kind of stuff. So if you start noticing that rigidity start like popping up in training, as a coach, we're going to address that in training. The big thing about meet day is, this, I know this, any coach knows, we're not going to fix something on meet day, right? Like, if somebody's making maybe there's a little mistake they can fix, but it's not the day to like revamp technique because you're not pleased with their start position, right? Meet day is triage. We're just like, okay, hey, I got to remind you of this. You've done this. I'm going to remind you. Okay. All right. Move them on to the next one. Hey, keep in mind, we've been working on chest up, it's just reminders. So if it pops, if you haven't addressed it prior to meet day, technically, physically, right? You can't gain leg strength on meet day, right? I always, to me as a coach, meet day is almost always an accurate reflection of what your training was like. If you go 1 for 3 on the snatches, I bet you were struggling with training with your snatch and training. If you almost pass out on the jerk, you probably almost did that in training. And we were just hoping that those things weren't going to show up on meet day. But most of the time, meet day is a reflection of what's going of how training has been. It's why weightlifting is such a cool sport, right? It's it's true or false. It's yes or no. It's what you put in is what you get out. All that kind of cool stuff. But yeah, meet day is usually a reflection of your training to a pretty accurate degree. Certainly, there's times where I've had athletes get sick or tweak something right before a meet or something like that. But all in all, if you didn't address it in training, it's probably going to pop up on meet day.
One thing that you talk about a lot is visualization and the importance of visualization. It's probably one of the most popular topics in sports psychology, and it's something I've always had a little bit of a hard time with. Can you talk about visualization, the importance of it, and then maybe give some tips for people who struggle with visualization and how we can actually make this like a habit that people stick with for a long period of time?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so visualization, a lot of people have talked about it, um, said it. Most athletes do it innately, right? If you're thinking about your sport, uh, a lot of times you visualize. The first step in visualization is seeing someone else do it. Like you in your head, you see. You can kind of picture Lou doing like snatching, or Lasha, or Kuo Sing Chun doing a snatch or whatever. You have this model that's like that's probably your first step, and then you start visualizing. Maybe you put yourself in there, and it's like in third person, and then yourself you might see yourself in first person. It might be in slow motion, and then you can see it full motion, first person view kind of thing. So that's, most athletes do that, right? Pretty innately. You kind of see yourself. You're like, picture yourself. You might picture when you're a kid, picturing yourself hit a home run or the last second shot in a basketball game or something. So that's all visualization. But that's like kind of ad hoc visualization where it's like not doing anything in particular. It's cool, right? It's good. Like you should see yourself succeeding. I want to see that kind of stuff. But there's a much more powerful thing, and in sports psychology, it started to become called imagery, which is almost like the entire package, right? Not just like seeing it, but hearing it, feeling it. There's a model called like PETLEP, encompassing like emotions, tactile, all the different pieces of imagery in one. And so what you could do is there's imagery scripts that you could follow online. They're pretty easy. There'll be one in the book that's coming out, but it's like, what do you hear? Like, what do you see? Who is there? What emotions are you feeling? What is it? What do you smell? All of that kind of stuff, where it just takes you through every single piece. And it might be hard to pull those things out at first. You might actually need your coach to tell you, this is my first nationals, coach. I'm really excited about that. What's it going to look like? Okay, well, nationals next year is in Colorado Springs. We've, coaches have been there once or twice, so you can tell your athlete it's a pretty vertical wall of seats in front of you. Your family might be there. They might be sitting right in this area. You'll probably hear someone cheering, go, go Brian, you're going to, get this or whatever. You'll hear your coach in the background. And so you want to build that entire thing. And I build it in segments where I think about the imagery of my name is called, right? That pre-performance routine earlier. Okay, I told you what I was doing, what my body was doing, but I also know what the knurling feels like when I hook grip the bar, right? I know how firm the wood feels under my feet. I can hear my coach in the background saying, Will, keep your chest up, or stay tight, or whatever it is. And you build that entire routine, and then you just practice it. You could record it yourself and then listen back. There's this really cool app that we got to use, that I got associated with the guys who made it, called Pursue Mastery. And they do it through AI. It'll have a whole series of questions. They'll ask you how what are you doing? What are you training for? Do you have fears? Are you worried that you're going to miss something? Are you going to, I'm worried about missing a snatch. Like, what's it going to sound like? What's it going to feel like? And you just lay there and you listen to it, because then you can really, really go through it. So you have to build this imagery script well. Like, you have to take the time to do it. You have to be a good question asker and good at answering it in detail. And the more detail you can put in it, the better. And if you don't know the answer, you don't know what the venue is going to look like. Kind of look those things up and add all those pieces. And that's how you make really good imagery. And the research on imagery, that kind of stuff is, the success rate, the perceived confidence rate, perceived feelings of confidence going into a competition or into a big moment are much higher when athletes have done some level of imagery.
Something I've practiced in my own training, and what I've tried to tell some of the athletes I coach, about visualization, I usually go with like kind of like a scenarios, is kind of how I approach it a little bit. And so I'll have them visualize a scenario where they missed their last warm up and still come back and smash their opener. Or I'll have them visualize a scenario where they have some kind of setback. It might be, missing a certain lift on the platform, or, going 1 for 3 in snatches, and having them visualize how they approach those clean and jerks after that. Or, if it's a specific number on the bar, what that number looks like as they walk out, or what they're going to feel like as they try to hit that total that they're trying to hit, to qualify for whatever meet it might be. So I really like what you said about, kind of creating this total like sensory experience that they can like see themselves in it, but not just see, but like feel themselves in that situation. And yeah, what do you think about like, because it's something I've been hesitant to recommend to people, because I'm like, well, should I have somebody visualize missing a lift even if they come back to make it? Do you think that's a good idea?
I think that I always tell people we'll be going through it. I'll say like, maybe before a lift, in between. A lot of times, if I've had athletes prepare well enough, I can like call on them to start their visualization as they're sitting there in between a lift. And so I might say, they're sitting there in the chair, their eyes are closed, and I'm trying to bring them back like into the moment. And so I'm encouraging them to visualize. And I'll say like, all right, you pull it, but your chest drop, and you have to you have a little hop forward to catch the bar. You got to double bounce the squat and stand up, right? Something like that. So I think that it's fine to visualize that, because things aren't going to go perfect. And again, I think that confidence is earned, and you can earn confidence in visualize scenarios where I do come back from this. I know what this is going to feel like. If you do a good job of it, I know what it's going to feel like. I know where my emotions are going to be because I missed my opener and I got to come back for my second. Or it's my third attempt and I need this to qualify for senior nationals. And I just took the clean 2 minutes ago and it was really heavy, right? Like, how am I going to do that? You still got to do it, right? So I hope, I think it's accurate to talk about that in training to some degree. It's not always negative visualization, but it's like that's just preparation. I think that any good like basketball team, any good football team has scenarios where they're down by 3 points in the last 2 minutes, and what are we going to do? How are we going to get these points? How are we going to come back? So I think that there's definitely applications to both positive and negative. Particularly once athletes have a pretty robust ability to like just see it, like do that, go through that routine, that pre-performance routine, and they can visualize that and see it. And then adding in layers to that where there are complications or comebacks and all that kind of stuff is super important.
Or almost like you could maybe even start the visualization like scene, like, okay, you just missed your opener. Like, we're not visualizing actually missing the opener, but like,
yeah. Okay, you just came back and you missed your opener. You're about to sit down. You can feel the plastic chair under you. You slouch down. You take a deep breath. Your coach comes over and says, "Hey, you've got this." Right? But you can feel that you're a little bit tense. You have to take a couple deep breaths to get rid of the tension. And like all this kind of, what are you going to say to yourself? How are you going to feel? How are you going to get yourself confident to get back up there? There's one thing in the book that I talk about is like resilience. And in weightlifting, I think that there's a ton of opportunities for resilience, in particular, like after misses or in the middle of tough training blocks, or all these different times where you're like, man, you got to be pretty tough and do that kind of stuff. And the things you're talking about, Calvin, I say are like resilience training. That is like, in training, make somebody, everybody, my least favorite excuse from a weightlifter is like, well, I would have had it, but I had to wait 10 minutes because there are too many people on the board and I just waited too long. Well, you had a chance to practice that. Like, what are you talking about? Weightlifters didn't want to wait around to take weight. Like, I've watched you train. You're on your phone for 3 minutes and you talk to somebody, and 6 minutes later you came back and hit that, no problem. But in a meet, when you're focused in, 8 minutes is too long. So we'll do stuff like, I'd say it's like resilience training, where it's like, I'm going to put you in weird scenarios. I'm going to change the music. I'm going to I'm going to have somebody walk in front of you on a, on an 85% snatch or something like that, and see if you back off or see if you take it, right? I'm going to make you take your opener, wait 8 minutes, and you're not allowed, and then you have to take it again. I'll have you take your opener and then make it again in 2 minutes or something, right? So, those things can be periodized, just like training, right? Where just the simple little things early on, where we change the music, or we do these sorts of things, or we, then we could add little pieces of competition, or we could add weird scenarios to training, so that once you get there, you're like, well, I've done pretty close to that. Like that's hard, and I did that under worse circumstances, and I wasn't peaked out, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that you're on to something, right? Like, let's train it in different ways, train imagery, train all these different things, so that the athlete is more robust. And, I think this, in the book, I compare a lot of these like mental skills to armor, right? Like, and we're just beefing up your armor.
How to be prepared for when USA Weightlifting clicks next on the playlist and it goes from AC/DC and into Taylor Swift on your third attempt clean and jerk, and you gotta stay within that zone. That's a bunch of awesome stuff.
Quick interruption of the video to announce our newest project, the Competition Strong Team on Train Heroic. If you're an intermediate lifter competing or planning to compete on the national circuit, this is the program for you. You'll get access to proven programming, daily video review, and coach messaging for $39 a month. Just click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on the screen for a free week trial today. All right, back to the video.
Yeah, I want to talk about journaling. That is something that I love the idea of, but then when it comes to the time to implement it with athletes, I find myself kind of choking on knowing what to have them journal about. And maybe it's just the context of the setting, right? We talked to like 30 young high school lifters all at the same time, where that each one of them probably needs to journal on something very different. How do you approach journaling? What are some, and then maybe let's go ahead and go like 3 very entry-level journaling prompts that weightlifters can start implementing immediately.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I would say that this would be about, let's start pre session, right? You would come in, certainly there's just like things you should journal. So you keep track of it, because you want journaling is I think about journaling for weightlifting mental performance as in the same bounds as like my training journal, right? So like there's a pre-training prompt, and you could have just normal things like how many times did you eat today? How many hours did you sleep last night? All that kind of stuff. That gives you a baseline of how you're feeling, like how sore are you from yesterday or whatever, right? So that would start it. But then I would get some pre-training prompts, and it's like, what is an outcome goal today for today's session, right? So that could be like get more total volume in this workout than last week, or hit 90% for 3 singles, or whatever that outcome is. Probably not tie it specifically to a weight, but like it's still an outcome. And then I usually put one more kind of identity thing in there, as I complete this sentence. Today I train like someone who, if it's a bunch of high school kids, it's like who is going to be the captain of the varsity team next year. Or I train like someone who's going to qualify for nationals. Or whatever, or maybe who is a really good teammate. But today I want to focus on my team, and I'm gonna cheer everybody on and be super encouraging. So maybe an outcome goal. We could tie some process goals in there, but I think weightlifting is an outcome-based sport. So I know that there's process involved in it, and we want to have process-based goals in there. And the difference between an outcome goal is like probably a number or what happens, and then like an achievement goal is a placing or a medal. And achievement goals are hard to control in weightlifting because you can't control what anybody else does, right? You can't just you can go lift more than somebody else, but what if they lift more than you that day? Then you can't achieve your make that achievement goal. So usually you have to have like outcome and process goals to lead towards that kind of stuff. And then yeah, I like that identity. Today I train like someone who, and then put it in there. During the training, I just log stuff, right? And then afterwards, I have like two things that I ask every athlete to journal. And this is one of my most favorite things is what did I like about today's session and what did I learn today? And because every day is an opportunity for some growth. And so I have to have stuff that I learned. And no matter what, if I do a training session, I have to find something I like because that means that I'm like involved in that process and I am enjoying it, right? There's no terrible training session. I mean, I guess unless I got horribly hurt, right? But like I like if I'm making through a training session, there's something I like, and then I have to find something I learn because I have that growth mindset that I have the chance to get better after this session. And I really don't say like I dislike that, right? I might learn from it, but I this is, this might be semantics. I might just be twisting words, but I don't say like, dislike. I say like and learn because learn means I have an opportunity to improve it. Dislike is just a thing that happened and it could be, it's done, right?
I love that, and learning is such an important thing to anchor to because you hear people talk all the time that say like, there's no failing, there's just learning, right? Like that's all well and true to hear, but then if you're not putting that into practice and actually taking away like what did you actually learn, otherwise you just kind of let yourself sit in the failure, air quotes there, instead of actually anchoring back to what did you learn from that session. So I really like that, and that kind of reminds me of something that I picked up from Kara Head Slaughter, where she said that she does something very similar with athletes, where she would have athletes grade a lift on a scale from like A to F. But instead of grading the whole lift, she would have them break down portions of it. And so that really seemed to help athletes who maybe felt like a lift was either an all or nothing, like it was either good or bad. And that leads to the session kind of being either good or bad rather than what did you learn, right? What did you like? What did you learn? I really like that approach. That's great.
There's like there's a good lesson in there. Like you could be having this, your snatches could just be off, but you could turn it into a good session. You could, cut the snatches short and put some extra volume in some pulls or, block pulls because you're just you're having a hard time from the knee to the hip or something like that. And it's like still like there's still room for growth. If you're always looking for something you can learn and something you can like, you're always looking for growth in a session.
Kind of back to what you were talking about with like outcome versus process goals, because I feel like on maybe like a bigger picture, this is something I see a lot of athletes, maybe at my level at Lindenwood struggling with. They keep trying to arrive at maybe it's like a certain number. They keep trying to arrive at that elusive 100-kilo snatch or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever the number, the round number that ends in a zero usually. Or
Yes, it always does. And everybody's always so focused on trying to get there and like just trying that number. But a lot of people do miss out on the processes and the person who does that kind of thing. It's like, I've heard that kind of a good quote that's like, like picture the person that does that thing. This comes back to, I guess, like the identity stuff you're talking about. Like, what are that person's habits? Like I think it's, it's good if I'm like, okay, well, what would Hampton Morris, be doing to prepare, for this lift? Or what would, another good, Olympian be doing as they approach this session? Like, would they be eating carbs before training? Yeah, probably. And my coach has kind of a good quote, and I looked it up because he always butchers it. He never says it right. But he says, there's no glory in climbing the mountain if all you want to do is get to the top. It's about, the journey, experiencing the climb that you get there. And that's kind of a cliche thing, of course, But yeah, I want to bring it back to that process versus outcome, because you said you maybe don't use as much process, at least in the training journal. But how do you talk about that with your athletes, the long-term habits and stuff?
yeah, so when we're in goal setting, I have this thing. It's like kind of like this picture of perfection worksheet there's a sports psychologist in England named Bill Beswick talks about kind of this idea, and then he talks about creating the picture of perfection. And so I've made like a picture of perfection worksheet to make this idea come to life. And it's like, imagine yourself 12 months from now. This is like the magic question, like people ask in sales a lot of times. Like, imagine yourself 12 months from now, and all of your goals for this year have been accomplished in weightlifting, right? What has happened? And so it's like, maybe we do this first year. It's like, I'm American Open champion. I've, I PR'd my total. My family's there watching me, and, et cetera, right? That's my picture of perfection. And then you start working backwards, and it is like, then it's the atomic habits, where it's picture that person. What have they done to get to that point? What are those things? And what kind of processes have they put in place to do that? And they sleep 8 hours a night. They train 5 times a week. They, they journal. They practice their imagery. They do all these things. And those are the process goals. Unfortunately, in a training session, the thing about weightlifting is, it is outcome, like there are numbers involved every single day, right? And those numbers relate to some other number that you've done another time or that you want to do in the future. So weightlifting is inextricably stuck to outcomes. So yes, there's a bunch of process goals you should do. You should show up early 20-minute to training by 20 minutes so you can make sure you do a complete warm up. You should log all your lifts. You should always journal. You should do all of these things, but there is an outcome attached to that, right? It's like you can't lift 60 kilos all year perfectly and then snatch 150 at the end of the year, right? Like that's not going to happen. At some point, you're probably going to snatch 120, 130, 135, 140, 145, 147, 148. And in most cases, if you're going to snatch 150, I bet you snatched 149 recently before 150, right? Like that's just how weightlifting works. But there are processes in training. There are like workouts that are kind of markers. Great weightlifting coach, to me, has sworn to me that you can hit 90% for 10 singles in one workout. You guarantees you're going to PR, right? Like, okay, so that's a workout. Let's try and hit 80% for 10 singles. Let's hit 85% for 10 singles. Maybe, let's hit 87% for 10 singles. That 90%, you're going to PR if you hit 90% for 10 singles in one workout. But like, okay, let's do all the steps on the way to get there. That's how you put process in a goal, in an outcome-based sport like weightlifting. So definitely all the things outside the gym. Once the weight's loaded on the bar, there's going to be indicators that are outcome that you have to do. But then we try to find some of those processes. A process is like another process goal in weightlifting is, if you struggle with the stand-up of a clean and your ratio of your clean to your front squat is 95%, right? Like you probably need to get you're obviously super efficient, so any kilo you put on that front squat's going to help. So that's a process goal. Like I have to front squat more. I have to like go through the act of adding volume and adding intensity so that my lifts will go up.
Quick interruption of the video to tell you about the OlyStrong team. The OlyStrong team is my group coaching program designed to be affordable and effective. You'll get access to your choice of 3 or 5 days a week of proven programming, daily video feedback to improve your technique, and unlimited coach messaging to ask as many questions as you'd like, including the dumb ones. Most coaches charge hundreds per month in coaching fees, but I'm giving it to you guys for less than $30 a month. And you can try it for free for 7 days by scanning the QR code on the screen or clicking the link in the description below. All right, back to the video. One of the probably most common mental struggles that athletes in weightlifting will probably face is perfectionism. Do you have any tips for people who struggle with perfectionism and how to maybe understand that, one, it can be kind of used a little bit to your advantage, but then also how to make sure that it doesn't lead to negative effects on your training as well?
Yeah, so perfectionism is a real thing, right? And there's actually a ton of research in like sports psychology and psychology overall with like, is there good perfectionism? Is there bad? I would lean towards everything I've read that there's adaptive perfectionism, the stuff that leads us to being good, like successful. And then there's maladaptive perfectionism, where it leads to just super self-critical self-talk. It leads to your self-worth feeling much lower because you didn't achieve at a meet or something like that. So that would be maladaptive perfectionism. The positive sides are what we talked about, like, oh, what does a really successful weightlifter do? I think both of them relate a lot to identity. We've danced around this just a couple times. We mentioned it in passing, but like identity is a topic. It's one of the first things I lead with in my book, is that identity is the degree to which you identify as whatever you are, as a weightlifter. And if your identity is 100% wrapped in weightlifting, you're probably like going to link towards maladaptive perfectionism, where you have really bad self-talk, you get really upset, you like have a hard time coming back. Let's say you have a tweak or an injury or something like that. You're just a bear to be around, all that kind of stuff. You refuse to take time off, that sort of stuff. So your identity can be adaptive, it can be maladaptive. If your identity makes you make good decisions for weight, because it makes you sleep more, it makes you eat better foods, it makes you maybe don't go out and drink on the weekends or something like that. You like, I can't right now, or whatever all that kind of stuff. That's great. But when your identity is like super tied to weightlifting, that can feel like a big weight, where you have a bad nationals and you feel like you have to make some post on Instagram to explain it away. But really, like, it's okay. Like, you're fine, right? Or you can't I had a lifter recently who was like, I'm going on vacation next week and I'm a little like, I'm kind of feeling, training is difficult. I'm not very motivated, but I'm going on vacation. Can you help me find a gym to lift at while I'm on vacation? And I was like, what? Just take the week off. Like, like if you feel guilty taking a week off 20 weeks away from a meet, your identity is probably maybe too associated with weightlifting right then, So I think that perfectionism really goes down to identity and making sure that your identity has like multiple parts, right? And you lean into the other stuff. So to me, it's like, ask questions like, what other things do you enjoy? Lean into some of those things. Like, don't make your only friends be from the gym. Try to find other friend groups, have other outlets, whether that's like a club or church or, like any other interest, puzzle, whatever that helps you find a little more diverse identity will probably stave off those bad parts of perfectionism. Because we know that some people who are perfectionists, like, they achieve super high. They can, right? But they also are terrible risk of burnout, terrible self-talk, depression, all that kind of stuff.
That is so interesting. I think the identity, I'd never really thought about the maladaptive side of perfectionism being tied to possibly having too much of your identity centered around being a weightlifter. I really love that. That is so interesting. I think that kind of goes back into maybe journaling a little bit for people as well. Like, if you're not really sure who you are outside of weightlifting, then you should probably spend a little bit of time writing. I can personally say, like, for me, spending a lot of time writing has helped a lot with figuring out identity a little bit, and also just getting down to clearer thinking about how you approach everything. And so I think that's such a really, really helpful tip for people.
One big thing, like, I think in weightlifting is like, Matt Foreman told me a long time ago that weightlifting is a wait your turn sport, in that for most people, you just got to keep going, right? And keep showing up. And a lot, I've been in weightlifting for a long time. I've been coaching weightlifting for a long time. There are a bunch of people who are kind of like comets into the sport, where they're just like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do this. Like, and boom, and they're a shooting star. And then they just start gone. You're like, wait, do you remember when so-and-so won nationals and whatever, or like, do you remember that club that was going to change everything? And then they're gone. But, like, there are a lot of people, the people who are still here, still lifting at a high level. Let's say most of the people who made the Olympics, they'd lifted for 8, 9+ years, right? Mary was like the shortest at 6 years. So it's like, you gotta be in it. and like keep going. So a lot of what I want to talk about is I want to give people like, you can't just be totally wrapped up in the identity of weightlifting because you're going to burn out. You can't have negative self-talk all the time or you're going to burn out and you're going to quit. So we want to have these adaptive versions of all these things so that it just keeps you going.
That I think a lot of people may be kind of surprised to hear that, especially in the kind of the younger demographic who maybe 18 to 25 age range, where people are like, this is my whole life, like this is what I have to do to be really good at this, because that's kind of what we hear people talk about all the time, like from high level athletes. They're just like, I moved across the country, sold everything I had, I worked with this coach, and I was all I did. I lived and breathed weightlifting.
Yeah, I did. I know, like Mary moved multiple states to train for the Olympics, but Mary has like another identity. Mary's married, has like a really good relationship with her husband, and they are like a strong couple, and they do other stuff outside. But then she trains really hard and focuses really hard, and every weightlifter has struggles with some piece of the mental puzzle, maybe. But like, yes, there is stuff like that, but that's not there are 3 people who made the Olympics for women and 2 who made it for men. And you might be one of those people if you're listening, but there's a higher likelihood that you're not, unless you only have 2 listeners or something. I don't know. But and it's Hampton Morris and Olivia Reeves. If they're the only 2 people listening, then I stand corrected. But more than likely not. And you just got to keep going, right? Like you got to keep going, and then you're going to you'll punch your ticket to the higher level. So and even those, even some of the best, I think that the best lifters have really good mental strategies. Not just their identity is more than that. And when they struggle, it's because it's only that. Or they have great self-talk, or they have really good performance routines. If you were around Hampton is like Mr. Routine, right? So they all have superpowers, and they, in some certain area, right? I think Olivia's just got awesome self-talk, seemingly from the outside, and talking to Steve. And so I think that they might have a superpower. They might have weaknesses. I don't know, right? But they have some superpowers in some of these areas that keep them able. That allows them to continue doing it.
With the kind of wait your turn mindset too, I see it so much at Lindenwood. Like, we get kids that come here, and it is it's moving across the country for many of them. They come here and they're like, okay, I'm ready to train really hard, and I'm ready, and give me the good program that I didn't have before, and give me the XYZ, and then it's like, oh wait, no, I'm still just making the same rate of progress.
It's kind of more of the same, but now I got a bunch of teammates, and it's yeah, right. But yeah,
I think maybe a little parting words here for anybody. With mindset stuff, the way that I think about it is, you're practicing something, whether you like it or not. Like, every day you're practicing something. And so you can either be practicing the poor approach to it that you maybe have been currently, or you can try and take some of these strategies that Will's talking about and covering in his book, and actually start being a little proactive with the things that you're practicing, so that you're getting good at the things that you want to get good at, and not getting good at the things you've been practicing up to this point. So Coach, where can people find more about you and about the book that you've got coming out?
Yeah, at Will Fleming on Instagram is a great place to reach me. 1L and Will. And then at 1kilo.shop is where I have all my online presence. So if you're interested in the book or anything like that, look at either of those places and you'll find out.
We'll link the book in the description below for people as well, because we definitely recommend you guys check that out. Calvin, where can people find you?
I'm at Calvinaki 81kg on everything.
And you guys can find me at Big Ben Strength on everything. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.
If you found this video helpful, then make sure to check out this video here, or this episode of the Last Set, Best Set podcast.